hear apologies, it's like we stir up an ant's nest with the school bus remark. So I want to deal with it here tonight. Yes, I raised the alarm and warn, so we don't want to kill off poor people picking with some old bus. And I make no apology for that. We drove on the junction in a tour bus. And let me tell you something. It was a bit unnerving when we were on the bus tour. But the CEO of the bus company assured us when they buy those buses new, they have to get specially spec'd packages for them. They can't have the long overhang at the back. They have the proper transmission system for our hilly terrain. They have auxiliary braking systems, what you call engine brake, where you see the trucks and the coaches that coming down hills use as a backup braking system. We don't know if these school buses have those. But what we know the school buses have is the long overhang. When you go around the corners and the narrow roads, the swing out where you get from that overhang. Who knows what that can do to the poor pedestrians, and we don't have no sidewalk on those roads. But when those brakes, can you imagine those brakes coming down Plowden Hill, Pusey Hill, any of them steep hills?
As the 2025 general election draws near, education and transport have emerged as political flashpoints. And nowhere is the clash more intense than in St. Catherine, where the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, and People's National Party, PNP, are pitching two radically different plans to tackle rural school absenteeism. At the heart of it all, the question, who should be trusted to get our children to school safely, the government or the local taxi man? JLP's school bus plan, safety, control, and modernization. The JLP has launched an ambitious national rural school bus program. Spearheaded by Minister Darryl Vaz, the initiative is already being rolled out with 60 buses arriving this September and 40 more expected by January 2026. These aren't random buses. They come fitted with GPS, swipe card entry, cameras, and even adult supervisors to maintain discipline on board. Holness's administration argues that this is the safest, most accountable method for transporting students, a long overdue fix to Jamaica's dangerous patchwork of school transport options. With fares as low as $20 to $100 JMD and full subsidies for PATH students, the JLP is positioning this as a transformational, long-term investment in rural education. But critics are not convinced. PNP's ride plan, flexibility, economic empowerment, or pure madness? The PNP has countered with its own plan, the Rural Investment in Dynamic Education, RIDE, program, a more decentralized system that would pay licensed taxi and van drivers to transport students in hard-to-reach rural areas. Opposition spokesperson Damian Crawford argues that the JLP's approach is too centralized and unrealistic, especially for students who live in deep rural areas where buses can't reach. He insists that the PNP's model is not only more flexible, but cost-effective in the short term, and it puts money into the hands of local transport operators. In his words, why build a whole new system when we can empower existing, responsible drivers to do the job better, faster, and cheaper? But this, too, is controversial. Safety versus speed, the heart of the debate. Crawford and Phillips, the architects of the RIDE plan, believe the JLP is spending billions to solve a problem that local taxis are already positioned to fix. They point out that absenteeism in rural schools often isn't due to lack of buses, but lack of access and distance. A minibus can't climb into a remote farming district the way a Probox can. However, the government has slammed this as reckless. Minister Vaz pointed to dozens of child road deaths in the past 2 years, many involving route taxis. He says the JLP system would cut fatalities, standardize safety, and hold operators accountable, unlike a scattered network of informal taxis. Prime Minister Holness has gone further. This is not just a transportation program, it's a child protection policy. Still, many Jamaicans, especially in rural areas, are wary of both. On social media, parents and educators are split. Some say taxis are dangerous and reckless, with drivers racing each other for passengers and no oversight. Others argue that these same taxis are the only reliable means for children in hilly, underdeveloped areas, and that government buses simply won't go where they live. The money question, there's also the issue of cost. The JLP has not released a final budget, but estimates suggest it could cost upwards of $5 billion per year to maintain the fleet, infrastructure, drivers, and support systems. The PNP's ride proposal, on the other hand, would cost less upfront, with each child getting roughly $2,500 per week in transport subsidies. Critics of the PNP argue this creates massive oversight challenges. How do you monitor and vet hundreds of private drivers? And what happens when they don't show up? But supporters say that Jamaica already runs a taxi system. The ride plan just needs a layer of regulation and accountability, not a whole new billion-dollar bureaucracy. A defining issue in St. Catherine? St. Catherine, with its mix of urban fringe, deep rural communities, and rising education demands, is ground zero in this school transport war. The party that wins this messaging battle could easily swing marginal seats. This is not just a transport debate, it's a vision for how government should work. Do we build big systems from scratch, like the JLP's buses? Or invest in the people already doing the job, like the PNP's ride drivers? As with most things in Jamaican politics, the truth lies in the tension between both visions. Both sides have strong points and serious weaknesses. The PNP's plan could empower communities, but lacks central control. The JLP's system is ambitious, but expensive and possibly out of touch with Jamaica's road realities. Either way, parents in places like St. Catherine will soon have to decide not just who they believe, but who they trust with their children's lives. So, Jamaica time come, but who's driving the bus?